Part 3. Questions 21 to 35. In this part, you will hear 3 talkers. There are 5 questions for each talk or lecture. For each question, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. You will hear the talks or lectures only once. Questions 21 to 25.
You will hear a talk about timeouts.
Giving children time-outs won't harm them. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. There is good news for parents who are in two minds about the merits of using time-outs as a form of punishment. Research from the University of Michigan in the USA says there is evidence to show time-outs can be an effective discipline strategy for children aged between 2 and 8 years. Researchers say parents do not need to fret about their parenting skills if they give timeouts to misbehaving children, as they do not harm children's mental well-being or their relationship with their parents. In an 8-year study, researchers compared the emotional health and behavior in children whose parents used timeouts with those who didn't. They found there was no difference in the children. Timeouts are a form of discipline used by parents to modify their children's behavior. It usually involves sending children to a quiet space or quiet corner. The aim is for children to reflect on their behavior. Scientists have disagreed about the effectiveness of this strategy. Dr. Rachel Knight said, "Some reports in the media and by select organizations have suggested that timeout is ineffective and even harmful." She added, "There are some alarming claims that timeouts can damage the parent-child relationship and negatively affect emotional health, but the research simply doesn't support those claims." Dr. Knight concluded, "We did not find a relationship between timeouts and negative side effects in children."
Questions 26 to 30.
You will hear a talk about wasabi.
Ngu xài máy kia hút quẹt máy lắc không nổi luôn.
Wasabi gives woman broken heart syndrome. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. A woman ended up in hospital after eating a large amount of the spicy condiment wasabi by mistake. The 60-year-old woman was attending a wedding reception in Israel. She mistakenly ate around a teaspoon of the spicy green paste, believing it to be an avocado-based dip. Her taste buds got the shock of their lives when the spices in the wasabi started working on her tongue and nose. The woman said that within minutes she felt pressure in her chest and tingling all over her arms. She went to hospital the following day, where she was diagnosed with broken heart syndrome. This is a term for symptoms that are similar to a heart attack following physical or emotional distress. Doctors said the woman was struck with a condition known as Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. which typically affects older women. It is also called broken heart syndrome. The heart's main pumping chamber weakens and suffers a temporary disruption so that it cannot pump blood properly. It is usually brought on by life-altering and shocking events such as financial troubles, serious traffic accidents, or bad news. The syndrome is not as serious as a real heart attack. Most patients fully recover within a month. Doctors said, "To the best of our knowledge, this is the first report of Takotsubo cardiomyopathy triggered by wasabi consumption." They reassured sushi lovers that wasabi is not dangerous.
Questions 31 to 35.
You will hear a talk about decision fatigue.
Doctors give better care in the morning. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. The quality of medical care you receive from doctors could depend on the time of day you visit a hospital or clinic. A study from the University of Pennsylvania in the USA discovered a significant difference in the decision-making of physicians at different times of the day. The study concluded that a patient's chances of getting screened for cancer were a lot higher in the morning than they were in the late afternoon. Researchers investigated the numbers of women assigned to breast cancer screening throughout the day. They found that in the hour following 8 a.m., doctors ordered screenings for 64% of women who were eligible for tests. This figure dropped to 48% at 5 p.m. The researchers said the progressive reduction in assigned screenings as the day progressed could be due to decision fatigue. This is a kind of mental burnout that interrupts a person's ability to effectively make decisions the longer they work. Dr. Mitesh Patel said, "Our new study adds to the growing evidence that the time of day and decision fatigue impacts patient care." Researcher Esther Sang agreed, saying, "We believe that the downward trend of ordering screenings may be the result of decision fatigue, where people may be less inclined to consider a new decision after they've been making them all day. It may also stem from overloaded clinicians getting behind as the day progresses." This is Maya reporting from Saint-Cyr-les-Lacs in France.
Part 3. Questions 21 to 35. In this part, you will hear 3 talks, lectures or conversations. The talks, lectures or conversations will not be repeated. There are 5 questions for each talk, lecture or conversation. For each question, choose the right answer. A, B, C or D. Questions 21 to 25 refer to the following professor's lecture. First, take some time to read the questions 21 to 25.
So I really appreciate your talking with me about this.
Well, I was concerned. Generally, I think students should get a grade based on your overall work. But I could see that you didn't do as well on the last test, and you had done very well on the first two exams.
I know. I was right in the middle of moving out of my dorm at the end of the semester, and that was my last exam. Normally, I wouldn't ask to take an incomplete, but I just didn't feel that a lower grade really represented my work.
I agree. But again, I don't usually like to do change of grade forms.
Okay, I understand.
So, well, I was thinking, perhaps if you want to do an extra credit project, let's say something that will help you pull your grade back up to an A-.
I can do that. Look, it's so important that I maintain very good grades. My financial aid package requires that I do.
I can understand that.
So what should I do?
Okay, here's the deal. You write a 5-page paper on Shakespeare's worst play, and I mean you have to have read all of them to decide what his worst play was. And tell me why you think so.
Wow. That's
You want to get that change of grade, right?
right, yeah, of course.
Fine. So you'll have 2 weeks to write this paper. Shouldn't take you too long if you've done your reading.
Oh, I have. I've read all the plays, and I think I know which one I'm going to choose.
Fine, don't tell me. Surprise me.
I will. So, what happens if I do a good job on the paper?
Then I will fill out the forms for a change of grade. It takes a few weeks after that, but the new grade should go on your transcript afterwards.
Okay, I guess I will have to go to the library over semester break. Thanks for your understanding.
Questions 26 to 30 refer to the following conversation. First, take some time to read the questions 26 to 30.
Hi, I really need your help. I've got to prepare for a presentation, and I haven't got a clue about how to do a visual slideshow.
Well, that's why we're here. We have tutors who know all the word processing and presentation programs. Do you know what presentation viewer program you want to use?
I have no idea. Which is best?
That depends on what you want to do. Is your presentation just text, or do you want to use visuals with all the bells and whistles?
You mean like images and graphics and things that move around on the screen?
Exactly. You can include sounds or video too.
Yes, absolutely. The better it looks, the better I hope my grade will be.
Oh, I think it's important that a presentation look good, but you have to have the substance too.
I guess so.
You know what I mean. If you have a good foundation for your presentation, you'll be fine.
Oh, right.
Anyway, I would advise you to use this presentation viewer program because it's pretty intuitive. You can figure it out as you go along.
I've never really tried it.
After your tutorial, I think you'll find it's pretty simple. Speaking of which, when do you want to schedule your tutoring session?
As soon as possible. My presentation is next week, and I'm nervous about speaking in front of other people anyway. It would be bad if I had no time to practice using the program.
That's true. So then how about tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Bring your outline.
Great. I'll do that. Can I bring my laptop with me?
Sure. See you then.
Questions 31 to 35 refer to the following professor's lecture. First, take some time to read the questions 31 to 35.
With unemployment rampant in the economic depression of the 1930s, the government established a program to put people to work. It was called the Works Progress Administration, or WPA. The WPA funded the construction and maintenance of schools, parks, and highways. A small subdivision of the WPA, the Federal Arts Project, or FAP, was dedicated to employing artists. The reasoning behind the FAP was that the arts, as much as schools and bridges, contributed to the public welfare. And of course, artists at the time of the Depression were extremely vulnerable. Photographers were uniquely suited to the requirements of the FAP, not least because much of their work constituted documenting the achievements of the WPA. But documentation in the larger sense of capturing the reality of an entire country was the mission of many of the FAP photographers. One of the photographers funded by the FAP beginning in 1935 was Berenice Abbott. It was perfect timing for Berenice Abbott. She'd been photographing New York City since her return from Paris in 1929. Long before the FAP came into being, her stated purpose was to document and interpret America with love, but without sentimentality. And she felt that New York represented the essence of the changing nature of American society. I want to just go back to that word, sentimentality, because it relates to how we can define Abbott's approach to her art. As we talked about last week, photography in its initial stages had been used in a very painterly fashion. People like Abbott realized early on that photography's strengths had not been recognized or utilized. Abbott and her contemporaries rebelled against the widespread painterly use of soft focus in favor of the sharpness and clarity naturally inherent in photography. And they also rejected the sentimentality of typical pastoral scenes and landscapes in favor of a realistic depiction of fast-paced, modern urban life. It was this sensibility that she brought with her to New York from Paris, where she had been living for 8 years. Abbott's project was, simply put, to photograph New York City. She called her project Changing New York. And the way she approached this project was to try to depict, through photography, the interaction between human beings and solid architectural constructs. Or something like that. I don't have the exact quote. See, she was trying to find a balance between buildings and activity. So she decided to use more than just a handheld camera, which was perfect for, capturing the hustle and bustle of the city, but would not have done justice to the giant buildings that also define the city. At the same time, she didn't want to just overshadow everything with those buildings. So she began to use a large format camera, one of those rather bulky cameras you have to put on a tripod, and then you have to view the image under a black hood. Difficult to carry around, but it widened her vision. It allowed her to capture the size of massive modern buildings and also to juxtapose them in a shot with older, humbler ones. And to keep the life in her shots, she would often wait until someone passed by and make sure they were in the frame. Or she would ask people to walk through or stand in the frame. So she ended up using the large view camera for most of the work. Well, this Changing New York collection of 305 photographs is really a remarkable achievement. Its images are so powerful that Abbott is considered by many to be one of the 20th century's greatest photographers. In fact, one more contemporary photographer, Douglas Lever, was so inspired by her work that in the 1990s, he decided to re-photograph Abbott's New York photos. Imagine this. Lever went to the same locations, on the same day and same time with the identical camera that Abbott had used. He reframed Abbott's shots as exactly as possible. Why would someone do that? I have to admit, when I first heard about this, I was skeptical of one artist copying another so completely. But then I saw the photographs, and the amazing thing about them is that if you put them side by side with Abbott's, you see that they are a logical extension of her work. They take you even deeper into the contrast between the old and the new that Abbott so expertly revealed in the 1930s.
This is the end of the listening paper. Now, you have 5 minutes to transfer your answers to your answer sheet.
I want to talk about learning languages. I've lived in many different countries, both in Western Europe, the Middle East, and now here in Hong Kong. And during all of that time, I've learned 5 or 6 different languages to one degree or another. I love learning languages. Not only are they important when you move to a country, I just find them fascinating. Before I came to Hong Kong, I lived in Barcelona, Spain for 10 years. And when I first arrived, the most important thing was being able to communicate with people locally. I don't attend classes. I don't think I'm particularly good in classes. I prefer to learn by just talking to people, finding out what I need to say by looking at dictionaries and listening carefully. Other things that helped me when I first moved to Spain were watching the typical kinds of programs we see every day on channels around the world. For example, the weather. This is great because they always say the same things, so you can really quickly hear the same words repeated again and again, and the pictures help, of course. Other types of program that helped me learn Spanish quickly were things like game shows, where the same thing happens. They have a catchphrase or a slogan that they repeat endlessly when contestants win or when they're called to compete. As well as that, I used to pick up the Spanish newspapers. First of all, I just accepted there was no way I was going to understand anything but one or two words. But gradually, I found that I learned lots of new things about this. I was interested because I wanted to know what was happening in the country I lived in. But I also knew that I could learn a lot of language this way. So I'd take a dictionary with me sometimes, or I'd notice a word and I'd ask other people what they said, what it meant. Anyway, by far the best practice I ever had was just talking to people in the street or in shops where I'd rehearse in my head what I wanted to say beforehand before I went in. Usually, I made a right mess of it first of all, but after you get over the embarrassment, it's quite funny really, and people are very sympathetic and supporting in most cases. It took me a long time to develop a good level of Spanish. I lived there for 10 years, and I think I'm very fluent now. But I think for the first 2 years that I was there, it was quite a struggle to hold a decent conversation. There were always lots of words and expressions that I didn't pick up on. In particular, were the colloquial expressions, idioms, that kind of thing, that people use in everyday talk, but you don't necessarily see written down. I didn't find those very easy to learn at all. But it was a lot of fun, and people, as I said, are really supporting when they know that you're genuinely interested in learning their language.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today's plenary address, Dr. Howard Miller. Dr. Miller, professor of sociology at Washington University, has written numerous articles and books on the issues facing older Americans in our graying society for the past 15 years. Dr. Miller?
Thank you for that introduction. Today I'd like to preface my remarks from a story from my own life, which I feel highlights our common concerns that bring us here together. Several years ago, when my grandparents were well into their 80s, they were faced with the reality of no longer being able to adequately care for themselves. My grandfather spoke of his greatest fear, that of leaving the only home they had known for the past 60 years. Fighting back the tears, he spoke proudly of the fact that he had built their home from the ground up and that he had pounded every nail and laid every brick in the process. The prospect of having to sell their home and give up their independence and move into a retirement home was an extremely traumatic experience for them. It was, in my grandfather's own words, like having a limb severed off. He was quite emphatic, exclaiming that he felt he wasn't important anymore. For them and some older Americans, their so-called golden years are at times not so pleasant, for this period can mean the decline of not only one's health, but the loss of identity and self-worth. In many societies, this self-identity is closely related with our social status, occupation, material possessions, or independence. Furthermore, we often live in societies that value that which is new or in vogue, and our own usage of lexicon in the English language often does not bode well for older Americans. I mean, how would your family react if you came home tonight elated, exclaiming, "Hey, come to the living room and see the old black and white TV I brought"? Unfortunately, the word old conjures up images of the need to replace or discard. Now, many of the lectures given at this conference have focused on the issues of pension reform, medical care, and the development of public facilities for senior citizens. And while these are vital issues that must be addressed, I'd like to focus my comments on an underlying issue that will affect the overall success of the other programs mentioned. This has to do with realigning our perspectives on what it means to be part of this group and finding meaningful roles the elderly can play and should play in our societies. First of all, I'd like to talk about
Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about how to study. Now, you probably think you know all about that, right?
Yes.
You've been studying for years. And I expect some of you are fantastic at studying, really organized and good at concentrating. But there's always room for improvement. And your exams aren't far away. So these tips are for all of you. Right, so what's the best way to study? Well, first of all, it's a good idea to have some kind of plan or timetable. This could be for the week or a longer revision timetable for an exam from 1 month to 6 months. Yes. If you're studying for an important exam, it's important to think long term. Draw up a timetable, but revise it often. If it's not going to plan, you may have to rethink it. Next, think about your environment. Make sure the place where you are going to study is comfortable, with enough light, air, etc. Not too hot, not too cold. Make sure there are no distracting noises around, such as television. If you think you concentrate better listening to music, experiment and see if it's really true. Some people really do seem to work better with music in the background, especially classical music. But for many people, it spoils their concentration. However, if you have to work near a TV, you might have to use headphones to play music to drown out the sound of the TV. In this case, find out what kind of music works best for you. Maybe something without words. Oh, by the way, you might think you work fine with the TV on, but again, experiment. You might be surprised at how much better you work away from a TV. Oh, and the other thing is the internet, text messages, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Forget about all of that while you're studying.
You can't be kidding.
No, really, you can ignore it for an hour or so. It won't be the end of the world if you don't reply to a message immediately.